Hey everyone, this is Nick from LEO Combatives, and you're listening to the Mega Talks podcast.
What's going on, everybody? This is Christopher Thompson. You're here and listening to the Mega Talks podcast, and I got a great guest for you guys today. His name is John Foster, and I've known this guy, I'm not going to say how many years, but I've known him a long time. Always a smile on this guy's face, and he's running for sheriff of Yale County. How's it going today, John?
It's going great. We had a good time last night. Got to go out and visit with some folks at the Dardanelle Chocolate Festival, of all things, put on by the Chamber of Commerce. They did a great job and knocked it out of the park like they always do.
Nice. What exactly is this like the first thing for the chocolate?
No, actually, I believe this was the 7th. It was actually the first one I've had the chance to go to.
Really?
It was this one. They were raising money for a couple of families that are going through some illnesses and stuff. So money was going for a good cause.
Mm-hmm.
Tons of local businesses turned out to support it. You know, a lot of good people come in and got them some little chocolate to snack on.
Well, that's nice, because I hadn't heard of like anybody like doing a chocolate event or nothing like that.
Yeah, I hadn't either. But they did really well with it, though. A lot of people turned out.
Yeah, definitely during this time, COVID and all that. I'd like to have been there, but I didn't really. I didn't really know about it.
Yeah, I got beat up by some other of my friends that I failed to let know that it was going on.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Dadgum, I missed the chocolate festival. Really?
Uh-huh. Oh, can't miss out on chocolate.
No.
All right. I was reading through some of your bio things on Facebook and things like that, and I know it's right in there. You have 26 years in law enforcement.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I started started ride-alongs in like 1994 and started working as auxiliary in 95. Did basically a year auxiliary and then went part-time after that under Sheriff Lloyd Maughan. When Sheriff Gilkey, when he took office in 99, that's when I went full-time and promoted me up. I made sergeant in 6 months, went to CID in March 2001, so started doing criminal investigations then.
Nice.
And moved on in, worked a lot of crimes against children. I kind of became the main one for the county, doing that for quite a few years. Eventually worked my way up, and actually managed the criminal investigation division. Was actually the first one to institute actually assigning cases, which was kind of crazy that we weren't already doing that, but, a lot of just basic things sometimes, just kind of fall by the wayside and just kind of happen naturally, but sometimes you got to have a little formality to it.
Oh, some structure to things.
Oh yeah. And had good success with that. About 2010, Chief Deputy Sammy Johnson retired, and I got promoted up to Chief Deputy, and been doing that ever since. And basically, when Sheriff promoted me up, he told me my one job was to focus on, looking out for the best interests of the department. And I think I've done a pretty good job of doing that. And of course, the job of sheriff, the thing to do is not just the best interests of the department, but also the best interests of the community as a whole.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. And that was one of the first questions I was going to ask you is like, what does it mean to you to be sheriff? I know people see the position, they hear about the position, but what does it mean to you?
Well, I've got of course, I've had a lot of insight with that as chief deputy because I've had to work so close with Sheriff Gilkey over the years. And, there's a lot of things behind the scenes that most people don't really understand. The jail is a much bigger part of it than people realize. And then especially, with our new jail that opened up in 2016, we went from 2 jails with about a capacity of about 15 in each place to one jail with a capacity of 81. And within, a few months, we actually were creeping up on that. I think we actually edged over into having 70 something inmates at one time. And there's just the logistics that go into that. There's a lot of work and thankfully we had a good staff, that got on board with programs and help us troubleshoot things. And, just things as simple as delivering meals, in a timely fashion, handling, rec time, making sure they have time to get out and, use the phone and things like that on a schedule, collecting laundry, all that kind of stuff. It just takes a lot of effort that most people don't realize. But
because you have state standards that you have to meet in certain
absolutely.
times that you have inspections.
Yeah, and then plus, on top of all the constitutional issues, because the jail is the biggest liability for the county. Because most people don't realize that the inmates, they're under our care and custody, so we actually have legal responsibility for them. They're we have a duty to protect them, even more so than the general public, because they're in our care and custody. They don't have the option of doing something else, because they're fully under our control. So you have to take a lot of extra caution. You got to know what you're doing. As far as the more traditional aspects of the job, the biggest thing I want to do is, I've always been victim oriented, and I think that's the way we have to approach things. You've got to focus on the big crimes. And one thing I did when I became a detective, we used to, of course, back in the day, we used filing cabinets instead of computers, for everything. And I had kind of came up with a scheme that I would always put the more serious crimes to the front of my filing cabinet, instead of by the date that it happened or things like that. Because what I wanted to do is, I wanted to constantly remind myself that, hey, you've got all these big, important cases here, in the sense of serious crimes, homicides, crimes against children, rapes, things like that, that you probably should be putting some time in on, before you reach back there and work on somebody had a stolen TV set.
Yeah.
And it's not that you don't want to address those things, because you do, but you just kind of have to prioritize things too, and allocate your resources properly.
Prioritize over like the potential dangers for other people. I mean, people that may become victimized of serious crimes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's goes along with like the CID, and you've had a lot of experience in a few different departments within the sheriff's office. What are your leadership qualities? And what do you think makes a great leader?
Well, I think the biggest thing with a great leader is, they've got to understand, how to inspire people to do things. And by doing that, you've got to treat people right. You also have to realize what their abilities are, because, you don't want to task somebody with something that they're just not really cut out for. And especially in law enforcement, you have some officers that are going to excel in certain areas, and others that may struggle a little bit. And I think your leadership has to kind of recognize that and help steer them in directions, where they can really learn to excel. And then you want to also build leadership qualities in those officers, because, none of us are going to be here that long. And that next generation, we owe it to the public to get that next generation ready to handle things, to where they can actually come in and be prepared to do this. I've worked in almost every facet of the sheriff's department. Like I said, I've started as an auxiliary. I've sat there in bailiff court, and done the routine work like that, work traffic. Used to kind of specialize in DWIs. Served on the multi-county SWAT team, and then served on our SWAT team for a while. So I've done that, done the criminal investigation part. Never actually worked in the jail or worked as dispatch, but I have become an instructor for that and instructed that. So
that's cool.
I'm pretty well versed on those aspects as well. And and there's a lot of just little things that people just don't think of. Even things just as simple with dispatch, just listening to 911 calls and trying to pick up little communications things. Like, for example, the other day we had an incident where a younger person had called in, and the dispatcher was using the phrase, stay on the line.
Yeah.
Well, the kid didn't really understand what they were talking about, because with mobile phones and everything like that, they didn't really think of it as being a line.
Yeah.
And just little communications, things like that you try to pick up on, to try to increase the efficiency, just to make things work better,
Yeah. Newer, younger generation wouldn't think of a line as being like the phone line.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that was, and the dispatcher in the moment, it just didn't occur to him that that's what was happening. But on playback, listen to it, and it's like, I think there was a little communications issue there. you could tell that the kid was a little confused. And then another thing we've tried to do and had some success with is listening to the radio communications between officers and dispatchers and back and forth, and trying to streamline the way they give their traffic to each other. Just to make that more efficient, because one thing we've noticed was that as officers are out there trying to respond to something, our dispatchers were tending to give them things address first, and the first thing they would do is give them a numerical address. Well, as an officer, they're sitting there, and what they're wanting to know is what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a shooting? Is it a robbery?
Yeah.
What I need to do? What direction is it? And so what we were doing is we've coached the dispatchers into giving them what the major part of the call is first. What type of thing they're responding to, and then what area of the county they're in.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've made them understand that while that officer, he can be doing a lot of things out there on the street, safely getting his vehicle turned around, headed the right direction, and all that. Long before he needs those numerics on an actual address. That way, they don't have to repeat themselves later. Because that's what was happening. It was they were having to repeat a lot of traffic because it was just not what they needed at that moment. And on the reverse side, you may even remember this because we actually instituted this quite a while back. The ACIC, NCIC, which handles the terminal traffic, criminal information, driver's licenses, license plates, all those things.
Yeah.
They changed the order in which date of births had to be entered.
Oh, yeah.
And they made it go year, month, and date instead of month, date, and year like most people were used to.
Yeah, that was tough to get used to.
Yes, it was. And that actually helped us in explaining this change to the dispatchers for the officers' convenience, because we explained to them, a few years ago, the officers had to learn to do this for you to make it easier for you to type that in.
Mm-hmm.
And it made them understand and relate to that better. They're like, oh yeah, because if you gave that to me in another sequence, it's going to be a lot harder for me to do that, and I'm probably going to have you repeat something.
Yeah, because a lot of times you're just giving it to them, you're reading off a license, or they're saying it to you, so you just say it like they say it, and then it's backwards for dispatch.
Exactly. Yeah, and just little efficiency things like that. It's somebody without experience is not really going to know how important that stuff is, and it's kind of hard to get them to understand. But when seconds count, it's important to have that preparation done ahead of time and already have it working the way it needs to.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you do your training for like you were talking about, the 911 dispatch, is that for both sides of the county, or
no,
is there central?
All we've done it mainly just on the Danville dispatch because Dardanelle does their own.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have cross trained some for the jail, but we haven't cross trained the dispatch part.
Mm-hmm. And the jail has it's just one jail right now. There's not a jail in Dardanelle.
But the Dardanelle city still has their city holding cells, and they can hold up to 24 hours. So they still have to have certified jailers too.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as and you may have done some of this in the past, like the link between the sheriff's office and the public. Is there anybody that does the PR? Or has anybody done it in the past, and is that something that you have planned? Because I know you've handled like the social media things on the internet.
Right, and that's something that goes way back. I actually started the first website for the Sheriff's Department all the way back in 1997, if you can believe that.
Yeah.
And the Facebook page, we got that up and running. I don't remember how many we had got up to. We were well over 10,000. Mm-hmm. And that's a great tool, to get information out to the general public. And we've had a lot of success with that over the years. It has gotten to the point to where occasionally, when you have maybe a piece of video or something, somebody that's committed some kind of crime or, suspected to have, and you need to identify that person, we've had responses as quick as within 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to identify somebody after throwing it out there like that. Yeah. And then plus just the warning potential of being able to let people know about something that's going on, and I certainly want to continue that. As sheriff, I would I'm fairly technical, on the technology side of it. So I would plan on doing, probably more of that myself. And of course, as we move forward, we're moving into more of a video age. And that's something I'm going to be doing with the campaign here in the near future. And that's something I could see us doing down the road too.
Because I could see it being beneficial, because you can get a message out there, and you don't have like the middleman, the media being the middleman, and you have to have to wait for the broadcast. You can just do your own video or a live video, and everything is said, and people get to see and hear you say it, not secondhand.
Yeah, and actually, one of the surprising things I'd kind of noticed with the use of social media as we started pushing stories out ourselves was how quick the regular media would adapt to it, because they're in a time crunch on trying to get information out as quickly as they can too, and it actually wound up being beneficial to them because they just followed our page.
Yeah,
and it was not unusual at all for us to publish something on our Facebook page, and if it was a big enough story or whatever, rather than having to take the time out to type up a formal press release and all that kind of stuff, we could shoot it out there on Facebook, and Little Rock Media could pick it up, and it would be on the news in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
and that's that.
It's a good streamline.
Was an asset. Yeah, that was an asset that I really didn't anticipate. Because it really did kind of cut down on the need for so many of the formal, old-fashioned formal press releases.
That's cool. And coming along with your career, you worked with Sheriff Lloyd Mon and Sheriff Gilkey. Did you work closely with those guys? Because I know you talked about you worked underneath them as one in, maybe as auxiliary and one as a CID.
Yeah. Well, Sheriff Mon, he was always very supportive, and he was did a lot to encourage me and stuff with report writing and things like that. And that was something that I've always kind of kept in mind. They say you need to be careful, getting on to people. You need to be a little bit slow about that and a little bit quick to praise people, because that registers. And if you point out the good things that they do, they remember that. And that's some of the things I remember Sheriff Mon bragging when I first started about how one of the police reports I'd written was one of the better ones he'd ever wrote. And, as a young officer, that really helped me, and give me some confidence moving forward. And, and then Sheriff Gilkey, he's given me, I can't thank him enough for the opportunities that he's let me run with over the years. And, of course, I've, as chief deputy, I've obviously, worked closer with Sheriff Gilkey on, critical incidents and, just things over the years. But, one thing I had to do and got to help with was with the transition between the two. We had to, when Sheriff Gilkey came in, and this is, again, things people don't really think about, we had to all of a sudden, back in Sheriff Mon's day, almost every piece of paper we had, which, again, almost everything was done by paper, everything basically had Sheriff Mon's name on it. And so once we changed, all of a sudden, we've got 100 and something different types of reports that have to be modified. And
somebody has to change all that.
Yeah. So for the first couple of weeks, that was kind of one of the things I did, just to kind of help out, was, help with the transition and stuff, and, help get that infrastructure up and going. There was, a couple other staff members that, crossed over from one to the other that helped with the transition and made that go, a lot smoother. And, and I think that was a valuable experience. But, but my time as chief deputy, we've been through some tumultuous times, unfortunately. I mean, everybody does. And just, thinking back, there have been a lot of times it was just me and Sheriff Gilkey sitting there talking things out, and, hey, what are we going to do? What's best? And fortunately, we've always got along, and we don't, we're not exactly alike, and we have different viewpoints on certain things, but we have a lot of similarities too, and we tend to agree on
and some people would ask, they maybe they're looking, into the sheriff's office from the outside, and they see Sheriff Gilkey and they see you guys who are running for sheriff now, and what's the relationship between you and Sheriff Gilkey? Like, Did they give you a blessing? Is he stepping down, or what's that picture?
He was ready to move on. He's got other interests he's wanting to look into, and he's going to be out there and doing something different. And he's basically, supportive of all his employees. He's basically kind of taking a neutral position, because there is another candidate from the sheriff's office running, and and that's the fair way to handle it. And we'll see how things go.
Because I know some of the history, some of the transitions been a little bit more rockier than others.
Sure, certainly.
Yeah.
And
I think that's before our time.
and that's unfortunate, because ultimately, it's the people of Yell County that we're there for. And I don't expect, this transition to be, certainly, if it's me, I think it'll be very, very smooth. But I would expect, this transition to go pretty well. I mean, we've got a good system up and running. There's still a lot of things, a lot of areas to work on. There's always going to be things to improve. And, one thing, people may talk about is, well, they want to see change. Well, change is inevitable, and change is coming because there is going to be a different sheriff.
Yeah.
And it is going to be different. And, I think with my experience, I can make those changes be good things, and not go back, reinventing the wheel and, doing things. I've seen some stuff come out of some of the other campaigns that are, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And it's like, well, great. We've been doing that for 8 years, but
yeah,
okay. And you're going to have some of that when you've got inexperience. And, so I think that's one of the big benefits and advantages I'll have is I kind of know what the things that need to be honed in on, and I know what's working, and I know, areas that need to be improved on. And so I can kind of focus on keeping us moving forward instead of having to drop back and redo things that, that are just rehashed of things we were already doing.
Is there any changes coming for like the patrol side, the street initial report or street officers?
We've already kind of, it's been migrating some, as I'm sure you're aware. We've been, we've kind of leaned a little heavy probably on the CID side, and that has kind of shifted a little bit more towards patrol. We have a stronger patrol division, more officers than what we used to have. Of course, we've got, over 940 square miles to cover.
Yeah.
And, people don't realize that's thousands and thousands of miles of roadway. Residents,
I think it's the largest county in Arkansas.
I think we're about the third, physical size. I think we're about third physical size, but yeah, it's a tremendous distance. I remember, of course, back in the older days, being the only officer on duty and have one call all the way down at Ailey and the next call be at the county line on Highway 22 out of Dardanelle.
Yeah.
And it can take an hour running code. And thankfully, we're able to staff now where we've got, not just one officer out, we've got more than one officer out, basically 24 hours a day. So they're ready to respond, ready to help each other. And, we can work on some improvements, some stuff there on, addressing certain areas and allocating those resources around to make it more efficient.
Yeah.
Just get our coverage, keep working on improving our coverage and stuff.
Do you guys have going with the body cams and the in-car cams? And
they don't. They haven't yet. Obviously that's something that everybody wants everybody to move towards. But one thing most people don't realize is, cost. The cost is tremendous on those things, and as they're trying to address this nationally and trying to institute that, it's not just the body cams itself. It's also the storage capacity, the being able to, the logistics of trying to get a system like that that's reliable. And I've already started hearing about certain cases, in the news that, you don't really have all the backstory on it, but some of the stuff I'm hearing may be where there may be some problems because we had some equipment that just really probably wasn't up to snuff because somebody really couldn't afford, what they really needed. And so they're trying to do what everybody wants done, but without the capacity to really do that properly, they may be creating more problems than they're helping.
Yeah, we kind of had an issue with that. Like by the time you get a camera system or one camera system, the technology is outdated, and
Absolutely.
you have to switch because the things that you have isn't going to last.
Absolutely.
Because you can wind up buying 2 or 3 systems in the matter of less than 5 years just to keep up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we experienced that. I mean, we experienced that in the jail with air conditioners. So you can imagine what it is with body cameras and computer technology and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, because we have technology back there that went in 5 years ago, and then already they can't get parts for this or can't get parts for that. We're having to do some workarounds and stuff. And keeping up with technology, it's faster paced than it's ever been, and it's presents some challenges. I mean, those are all things that we're certainly going to try to stay on top of and look at. But
because I think it's coming to a point to where, I mean, public push. I think it's going to come to where the state will say you have to have it.
I think there's definitely a push trying to go that way, and it's something we've got to be prepared to deal with. Certainly.
And making the transition and just kind of going through different areas of the sheriff's office from patrol to CID, and this kind of comes into something that I've seen. Well, the most recent case is I've seen talk about the recent assault with the Justice for Jared and like CID. Now, I'm not going to ask you about details of the case, but when you're in CID, what's the process that? I know the process, but what's the process that you go through when you start the investigation of, let's say, a violent crime, an assault or something? It doesn't have to be specifically, a murder. It could be a sexual assault. It could be an aggravated assault, a robbery. Your violent crimes. What's the process for you guys?
Well, of course, a lot of it depends on how, on the specifics of the case, unfortunately. I mean, because, you find out about things in different ways. Sometimes, we have, citizens have observed something and call in. Sometimes we have officers observe something and initiate a response to it. As far as CID goes, the big things with CID is you've got to have officers that are capable and trained and experienced. And you kind of have to do an allocation of resources thing where, obviously when you get an officer that's maybe, he's worked for patrol for, quite a few years and gained some experience there, and you're going to move him over into CID, if he's never done investigations, he's not really going to be ready to come in there and work a homicide by himself. And so you have to kind of build that. Well, you have to start that in patrol. And part of the thing is you don't want to do the kind of agency where patrol officers aren't trusted to do anything except take reports. What you want to do is you want to build it to where they actually have started learning that process as patrol officers, where they've started preparing affidavits, doing interviews, talking to people, on crimes that are more the level that they're going to have time to deal with. And then by the time they do move up into CID, they're a lot more prepared to do that. The bigger thing is follow up, because you've got to stay on top of that. You have to really approach it from a big picture standpoint. That's when I went through CID management school back, quite a few years ago. That was one thing that I really didn't understand until I got into that class, is because, we tend to think of things on a case by case basis. And the problem of that is when you're working as an administrator or even the leader of a division like that, you can't really think on a case by case basis because you're going to wind up missing things. And what you have to do is you have to learn how to address things more across the board and, from a broader spectrum and kind of address the bigger issues. And you can kind of build a response to where you're not going to lose cases through the cracks, because you're going to build in systems where you go back and check and follow up, and you're like, okay, well, on this particular case, was there anything else we could have done? Is there anything we need to do now?
Yeah. And
then you go back and pick that up. Had a very interesting thing. Actually got the opportunity here a few years ago to help an outside agency, major agency from another city, on a follow-up on a major incident from their cold case squad from years ago. and it's I can't really divulge which agency or anything, but it was fascinating because it was a crime from the 80s, and it was fascinating to see their file and their communication between their officers. Even though they were doing it by paper, they had excellent communication from one shift to the next. It's like, they did a really good job of recording. Okay, we did this, made contact with this person. They said this. This person's supposed to be over there. Next shift needs to make contact, and then there would be follow up from the next shift. And the thing is, with the technology that we've got now already at the sheriff's office, I mean, it is built for that kind of communication, and we just have to do a better job of tapping into it. Because it literally, and I'm sure you're familiar with the RPS reports, it's built to have narratives added in there from individual officers chronologically. I mean, that's what it's built for. And seeing the way they did that with pen and paper in the early 1980s, was really got me thinking about where that needs to go, with the way the technology is today. Because, you can help ensure that you're not missing things, that you pick up everything that needs to be picked up and followed up on. And because ultimately, like I said, I want to be victim focused, and because that's who we're out there working for.
Yeah.
We're working for the victims.
And when you mention victims and you mention follow up, like obviously you get a call, you respond, there's an investigation, and from that investigation comes an arrest or multiple suspects or just one. Does the investigation stop after the arrest?
Not usually. Again, it kind of depends on the case. There are cases where it's pretty well wrapped up at that point. There's cases where there's follow-up that continues to need to happen for a while. And a big part people don't realize is, obviously the prosecuting attorney, he's the sole person that makes the decision on whether charges are filed on felonies or not. And basically our job is to try to get a case prepared for him so that he can make that decision. And, when we take a case to him, he may have, other things that he thinks need to be looked into. And I've visited with, other chief deputies off in other areas too, and they're kind of experiencing the same thing. Those kind of things are becoming more difficult than they used to be because the standards are being raised, just because of the way everything's going, in the country, where the justice system is moving, and what we're trying to respond to, the standards are getting higher. And, there are things that, would have easily, resulted in charges being filed or, a bond being set and those kind of things, where now, we're seeing challenges, not just from the prosecutor's office, but from the actual, court system itself, from judges, and rightfully so, because, we have to be held to a high standard. And we've got to meet those, and it takes experience and training to do that. And that's the biggest thing is you've got to really spend time, with those investigators and get them, trained and with a broad spectrum of experience,
proficiencies to do the job.
Yeah, to get proficient at that and to get good at that. Because there's a little bit of an art to that. Especially on doing interviews and things like that. But there's some great schools out there, and we need to tap into those resources. And another thing is working with other agencies. You have to be able to delve into being able to work closely with those other agencies and develop those relationships, because I know over the years, the benefits from that, you just can't even begin to describe it, because
you have a lot of smaller cities inside Yale County.
Absolutely.
Initial, that's local to work with first before outer agencies.
And even adjacent, jurisdictions, with the other counties in the area, because we're all in this together, and we're in it for the same reasons. And we've done a good job of working with everybody over the years. But that's, again, something where I think we can continue to show improvement. A big thing I want to focus on is crimes against children, because, it's close to my heart because I've done that for so long.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
I also know that that's something that a lot of times law enforcement doesn't do a great job on, because there's there's a little bit of resistance there where officers, they don't want to work on those kind of cases because they're not comfortable, and they're challenging, and but the thing is, it's so important, I mean, if you can't be there for the kids, I mean, what to me, just, hey, what are you doing? And that's something where, I think agencies across the board have really got to step up some training. It's come a long way. I mean, because we have the child advocacy centers now, and they are doing a tremendous job. We've got one over at Russellville that's awesome, that just does incredible work.
Well, that's good, because they didn't have that years ago.
No, that wasn't an option,
yeah.
and it is now, and that takes a big burden off of it, because they're able to do the forensic interviews with children where they're specialized in that, and where we used to have to do that, But that being said, you have to be careful as you do things like that, and as you start these specialized things. There can tend to be a mindset of, oh, well, that's not my job, that's their job, and you have to watch out for that, and you've got to keep those investigators, focused on, okay, it's your job to put everything together. Yes, they're helping you with that aspect of it, but you still got to
work the case.
Yeah, it's kind of like on a homicide case. There are times, and I've unfortunately had to do it several times. Where you've got to, as the investigator, you got to make that trip down there to the crime lab, and you've got to be there at that autopsy, because as uncomfortable as it is, there are conversations you can have with that medical examiner where you can give him information he needs, and he can give you information you're going to need that you might not get any other way.
Yeah, because it's not like you see on like a TV show, an hour TV show, and you just walk in and you talk to the medical examiner, and they, you exchange 2 or 3 words and you go on.
Right,
and way more than that.
And there's a tremendous amount of information, that you can garner, from doing that, and it's not that it's necessary on every case, but when it is, you've got to be victim oriented, and you've got to be there and step up.
And you mentioned CID. Is there a specialized divisions, like what some people would call like a vice squad? Is there a certain detectives for that, specifically for drugs, certain ones for sex crimes, other ones for maybe residential burglaries or residential crimes?
In a lot of agencies, there are. Ours is not really big enough, to do that. Where ours have really excelled over the years is in coming together when you do have a major case. I think that's something that we've been pretty successful at over the years, where basically it's kind of an all hands on deck kind of thing. And then you may diverge some responsibilities, but it may be on a case by, it's just going to be on a case by case basis. It may have nothing more to do with it than where somebody's located.
Yeah.
You may have one officer that's on the wrong side of the county. Well, he may be able to go by the office and stop in and be the one that types the search warrant up and contacts the judge and all that. It's just a resource allocation thing, and there again, that falls back on, you need them all to be, up to speed and trained and capable, so that they can kind of handle any of those jobs. And because you don't know where they're going to be at any particular time. But we've had really good success over the years with investigators being able to really step up and work as a team in those major cases. And I know over the years we've solved quite a few much quicker than anybody expected us to be able to do, if they expected us to be able to solve it all. And it's through teamwork and working together like that and being prepared for it. That's something that's important to continue.
How many deputies and, just total deputies, including like CID, and do you have?
We're up,
or will total, you have?
I think we're up 15, 16 now, I think, total for full-time officers. Of course, we've got, some transport officers now. We actually have a warrant officer now that kind of focuses, which even he, does other duties, when it's needed and stuff. But compared to, as Mike Mace would say, back in his day when it's him and maybe 2 other guys, it's come a long way in a relatively short time.
And you guys still work with the mounted patrol?
Yes, yeah. And actually, Mounted Patrol, they have started having some officers. I believe it was 2 years ago. They graduated 6
Oh,
from part-time
nice.
too. And so that's definitely a tremendous asset for us. Of course, I started as an auxiliary officer, so that's something I want to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's definitely a benefit to tapping into those citizens that are willing to step up and get some training and help out. And Mounted Patrol's been a wonderful resource for the sheriff's office for decades.
Yeah, it's definitely a helping for people that, looking for a future, and it's a good way to get involved.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know if you're aware or not, we actually just had our first one graduate. That a lot of the part-time 2 class is now done online.
Oh, really?
Through the state. Absolutely. Yeah. And they have a certain number of hours that are practical that are handled at the local agency level. And Arkansas Tech was gracious enough to we had one that was needing to go through, and they were gracious enough to let him sign up for it. And so he was able to do that. So he worked through a lot of the classroom portion of it online with the rest of them, and then showed up for the practical parts and got him moved through it pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's talk about one of the. We've been talking about a few things here. Let's talk about a couple of, call them bad areas, gray areas, whatever you want to call them. As far as what's the complaint process? Because I know that this happens. This happens like when people, if you don't wave at somebody, they'll complain. Yeah. Do y'all have a complaints process for citizens?
Yeah, we do. Basically, of course, you get different levels of complaints. You'll get people that'll just call, and they may not really want to. Most people don't really want to file a formal complaint. They just want to, hey, I saw an officer that was driving a little too fast. Y'all probably should have a word with him, something like that. And those are handled basically, relatively informally, where you just pass that on to the supervisor and have them talk with the officer about it. Thankfully, we don't get a lot of complaints. If we do have someone that's wanting to file a formal complaint, basically they can come in and meet with administration and usually myself, and I can let them fill out a statement, and then we'll go from there, and we'll just address it.
And what are the cons of Yell County? What's the bad side of Yell County? Things that from public perception and even your perception that need attention and need to be worked on.
You mean like the sheriff's department?
Yeah, that and maybe the criminal element.
Well, I mean, Yell County is a great community, and like any community, there's you've got some people out there that are going to make poor choices, and they just do, and and those, a lot of times, you'll see the same ones, coming in and out of the jail. They come in there a bunch of times, but we do have a drug court that has had a little bit of success, and we've started seeing some of those people that have had maybe drug issues and been involved with some crime that have been able to change and move on, and I think we need to do things to try to encourage that where we can. That's one thing I would like to see us try to move towards. And it's difficult to do with an agency in a county that's as small as we are, just because of resources. But I would like to see us address more programming and stuff within the jails. Maybe with some, we have some churches that come in and do some great volunteer work and stuff with us, but I would like to try to expand some of that a little bit, maybe get into offering a little bit more programming to try to help people out. Because, you've got a lot of people that just make bad choices, and with a little bit of help.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you about that, because, we know we get to repeat customers for years, but, with the system, the way it's, they know the edge that they can go to, and they won't cross that edge, as far as, like the criminal element. But law enforcement, your hands are tied. You can only arrest them. The justice system is only so strong. You're not going to spend a lot of time in jail. And a lot of times the community has more resources that they can come up with to remedy those problems if you can get those people into those types of programs, to help them with the problems that they're having, because it comes down to like social problems a lot of times.
Yeah, and socioeconomic issues. I mean, certainly, when people don't have resources, it makes life very, very difficult for them. And you know, it's just one of those things. You can't really fix the world, but you owe it to the world to try.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think there are some things we could try to do. Trying to expand some of the stuff, within the jail system itself, and then of course supporting the court system, and even falling back on just cases, because on individual cases, a lot of times what happens, it depends on the quality of the investigation that's turned over to the prosecutor.
Yeah.
Because if you've missed stuff, unfortunately, you may have a real bad actor out there that's able to get away with some things that they shouldn't be,
Mm-hmm.
because we missed something, and so you want to try to address that and present that to the prosecutor, where the prosecutor's got his best chance of presenting it to the jury. And I think you've been around long enough to have seen what's happened with juries over the years too, and the what's expected of law enforcement and the prosecutors and everybody during a criminal trial now is very different from what it was when we both started our careers.
Yeah.
And the expectation is just a lot higher, and a lot of officers even question whether or not juries are actually looking for reasonable doubt, or if they're looking for any possible doubt.
Yeah, that's a big story right there.
Yeah, and almost an impossible standard sometimes, but
Mm-hmm.
but that just makes it all the more important, what you do in the front end, because you've got to have all those I's dotted and T's crossed.
Mm-hmm. So, and I'll ask you, and we'll get ready to get out of here in a bit. What are the pros of Yale County? What's the good side of Yale County?
I think just the community. I mean, because our community has been just incredibly supportive of its officers, and the agencies. And I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. I had a relative told me back years ago that he would be happy anywhere in the world as long as he's got Mount Magazine on one side of him and the Petit Jean River on the other. And
Uh-huh.
I've pretty well tried to stick to that myself. It's been a pretty good policy. I think we've got a great community here, and that, to me, that's our biggest asset. It's just the people here,
Mm-hmm.
because they've been great to us, and we owe it to them to return the favor.
That's cool. Well, I think ask a few questions and
Sure.
get a lot of your opinion and things about, hopefully some information that'll be handy to the people that are following the election and the people that are involved, the citizens of Yale County. Is there anybody that you want to, or anything that you want to plug, or, about yourself, or anything, events that are coming up or anything like that, or?
Well, of course, we're going to have the Yale County Fair will be coming up in September. I think before that, we're going to have the Mountain Eagle Chicken Fry. That's been a long-standing deal going over in Dardanelle. Petit Jean River Monster Festival is going to be back this year. That was a new one that cropped up, and it's really growing. I think this year it's going to be huge in Danville. That'll be September 18th. And it's going to be a fun time. Everybody has a blast. We actually did a public safety tug of war, and had a great time. I mean, the fire departments, police departments were out there, kind of helped build that camaraderie a little bit of competition there. Everybody had a blast, and it was really encouraging to see the community standing around there and literally encouraging their local fire department and local police department, and cheering for them and stuff. That was really, really amazing, special to see.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, it was a really, really great aspect of it. But there's so much that goes on with that. I mean, they've got a car show, they've got a run that morning, I think the sheriff calls it a 3.1 mile because he doesn't want to call it a 5K. Oh. And it's just a great time. We had a lot of it. I mean, it's just in the spirit of fun and just bringing the community together. But it all goes towards the Lieutenant Kevin Mainhart Memorial Scholarship Fund, and we've done great with that. And this last year we were actually able to offer 5 $1,000 scholarships to students in Yale County.
Cool.
We did one from each school district, and then one at large to like a child of some sort of public, safety employee type thing. And I think that's something that Kevin would have been definitely tickled to see.
For sure.
I know he would have had a blast at the River Monster Festival for sure. Because we had a temper tantrum contest. We have live music that comes in, and everybody just has a great time.
Nice. Well, I appreciate you sitting down today and giving me the time and, getting the word out there.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity.
To wish you and your family the best of luck.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thanks for inviting me on.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been fun, man.
Yep. Yeah, I've enjoyed catching up with you too.
Yeah. All right. So we'll get out of here, and I hope you guys enjoyed the interview with John Foster. I almost called you Sheriff, but
Junior.
yeah.
Oh, well, Sheriff's even better. Everybody calls me Junior now.
So we'll see what happens. When is the election?
Should be May 2022.
Oh, okay. So we'll see what happens there, and make sure you guys, keep your ears and your eyes open for what's going on in your community and get involved, because that's one of the best ways to make change and to one, hold people accountable, and one, ensure your safety and other people's too, because that's one of the ways you have your voice to get out there. But I'll talk with you later.
All right, thank you.